Hey everybody, and welcome to December's edition of Board Game Buys. This is where I talk about all of the board games that I have acquired over the last month. This episode covering December 2023, and I have a whopping 18 new games here. Most of these were not purchased by myself but by my brother, so I'm quite looking forward to talking about them because it's quite a good variety of games here. As usual, be sure to check out KIENDA.co.uk, who do sponsor the show, offer great loyalty schemes and discounts, and they are the place that I purchase most of these games from. And if you use the QR code, you can get 5% off your first order should you spend over £60. But let's get cracking on with the games. Probably the most popular or the hot game at the moment that I have acquired is World Wonders. So I'm definitely reaching some popularity. This polyomino style game with quite a table presence as you're building up your own little map here, not only by placing these polyomino tiles themselves, but also by placing these cool wooden structures representing the wonders of the world. In this series, I don't tend to give my thoughts yet because I'll save that for reviews, but yeah, definitely excited to play this more and share my thoughts on it. Next up, I have Medici, the dice game. So I have actually played the original board game of Medici, which I liked. I didn't love it, but I did like it. This is, of course, the dice game version of it. Much lighter, not too much similarity with the actual board game itself. Just rolling dice, writing the value of the dice in these bits here, but also the type is going to let you go down these tracks to hopefully get the majority. Again, I have played this one only once, so I do need to play it some more before I share my thoughts. Some games here I don't know too much about. The first of which is Number Drop by AEG. It's described as a retro roll and write, and it seems to me like a Tetris style game as you're using numbers to make shapes and to try to fill in these gaps. That's all I know really. It sounds like a pretty traditional roll and write game. Also Hooky. Hooky, a game of mischief and deduction. You know, I tend to like deduction games and I tend to like word games, and when I've seen those two kind of aspects merged together before in games like Letter Jam, I've really enjoyed it. So hopefully this one is up there with a game like Letter Jam, because that is some pretty fierce competition, and I'm not sure if I need two games in my collection quite like that, but I think this one's got a little bit of a not a traitor aspect, but you are putting, I believe, a wild letter in there, or a misleading letter in these clues you're giving. I'm not quite sure how it plays, but I know it is, again, quite highly rated. So that is Hooky. Looking forward to playing that one. Next up, I have Nautilus Island. I remember watching a review of this one a little while ago and not being too enticed by it, but obviously my brother picked it up. We shall see if it's any good. 2 to 4 players, 20 minutes. You know, if anything, it's going to be quick, but we shall see. And I know this designer, Johan Gupi, he's pretty up and coming and he has made some good games. So maybe I'm missing something with this one, but playing it myself will certainly, certainly help me make my mind up. Cracking on then, we have the Juke. This is an abstract style game where you're using these pieces to, I believe, capture your opponent's pieces. Again, I'm not quite sure how the intricacies of this game work. I do like games like this. You know, I'm a huge fan of war chess. You know, if you watch my channel, you might know that. But that's kind of the kind of abstract I like, because it does have a wild element to it through that bag building. This one, I'm not quite sure if it does that. Again, we shall see if it is any good and if it's my style of game. Next up, Haval Land. Now this is one of Knizia's latest games. It's a 2023 release in the style of Through the Desert, Babylonia, Blue Lagoon, those styles of games. Now I have recorded my review of this one because I have played it quite a few times already. I'm very excited to share my thoughts on it, and spoiler alert, this game is fantastic. So I will upload that review very soon so you can understand why the game is so good. Next up, another 2023 release with Empire's End by John Declare. Lovely artwork here, Konchai Mori. Love the aesthetic. Now, I'm not quite sure exactly how this game works, but I know it does have that kind of no thanks style mechanism where you are putting tokens on things or putting value on things to not take it. And I really do like that mechanism. In general, I tend to like it in games like No Thanks and games like Firenze. It's just one of my favourite mechanisms. So hopefully this one executes that mechanism well. It's not a terribly long game. I think it does have a Euro feel to it. So 45 to 60 minutes, 2 to 4 players. It could be good. So I've kind of only looked surface deep into this one, so we shall see if the gameplay holds up. Next up, a blast from the past really with Cursed Court. Now this is a game that I was looking at quite some time ago actually, and it became quite difficult to get hold of a copy. So this is a 35 to 45 minutes, 2 to 6 player deduction game, where I believe, and I've not looked into this game for quite some time, you are basically wagering on which characters may or may not be in the fold, because every round a certain amount of characters are taken out, and everyone has limited information, and you can kind of use your bids to mislead other people to bet on things that aren't right. So it could be interesting. It's probably going to start peaking at higher player counts, but hopefully it works at that 3-player mark as well, because that tends to be what I play with. So generally games that require higher player counts to be great don't hit the table for me, which is a shame. But hopefully this one does work at those lower player counts. And nice to finally have a copy in our hands. Another 2023 release game now with First in Flight. This one, 1 to 4 players, 45 to 75 minutes. This is all about the kind of development of the first airplanes or aircrafts, or planes basically. And I believe it has some degree of deck building, a degree of push or luck as well as you're trying to fly across this board. Again, I don't know too much about the intricacies here. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's going to be too light for me. I'm not a huge fan of deck building in general, so hopefully this is one to buck that trend. To a couple of smaller games now. This is Cobra Yakwa. Now this is basically a little kind of a wagering game, or a little betting game, where you are trying to have the highest number in your hand, but your card is added on to this one that's in the central display, and you can either add a new card to your hand or you can change the center display, and you're just trying to basically win the round and collect these chips. It's 1 out of 5 in terms of its heaviness, so it's simple, super simple stuff. 3 to 6 players. I have played it, but only at the lowest player count, so I do need to try it some more with those higher player counts. A bit of a hidden game now with Trigs. This is a game that, for some reason, it caught my attention quite a while ago, but it's been difficult to find a copy. At least in England, it's hard to get a copy. I had to actually buy the second hand of somebody else who must have bought it from ashore. But this is a kind of a roll and write game, but it's a little hand management game where you're using cards to tick off the different numbers on your player sheet. But when you complete one row, you can tick off another one on the other row, and it's basically a race to get all your boxes ticked off. I probably won't do a full review of this one. It'll be part of a compilation, but it's addictive stuff, and it's pretty much turn your brain off and just play. But I enjoy it. That is Trigs. Another small card game now with Gap. I believe this was from last year. 2 to 6 players, 10 minutes. I tend to like these little small card games. This one, I forgot the actual main mechanisms of them, but I have looked into it recently and I know it does appeal to me. But it says the bigger the gap between your collected cards, the more points you'll score. So quick to learn. Again, these little breezy card games always hit the table regularly for me. Next up, one that's very anticipated for me. This is Patterns, which is described as a mandala game. It's a 2-player only game. Mandala is one of my favourite 2-player games ever. I think it's an incredible game, like a 9 out of 10 basically. And this one, I'm not sure if it's just a marketing ploy, it's in putting it in the mandala universe, if you want to phrase it that way. But the actual setup looks completely different. It's not a card game. It looks more of an abstract tile placement and manoeuvring, pattern building game, as the name would suggest. So I'm kind of going into this one blind, but based on the credibility of the designers and the previous game in this line, I'm willing to give it a go. So that is Patterns. The final few now. I got a couple of games from Dr. Steve Finn. I think these were from his latest Kickstarter. I have played these already. So we have The Fisheries of Gloucester, a kind of a two-player, almost abstract set collection style game. You're sort of manoeuvring around this board, collecting these different fish and completing contracts. And also Alpu Harris, which is kind of your more traditional resource management Euro with a time track, collecting resources and completing contracts. So I have recorded my review of Alpu Harris, but not The Fisheries of Gloucester yet, so I will be sure to do that soon. And the last couple of games here are Archaeologic, another 2023 release, a logical deduction game. This one, it's familiar. I mean, you've probably played games like this. If you play games like The Search for Planet X, this is very similar. You're basically trying to work out the perfect arrangement of these tiles on your personal player board. They're kind of like polyomino shapes. And when you're given clues through this quite clever little contraption, there's only one orientation they can fit in. So as you'd expect, these games are very clever. But is it for me? I shall share my thoughts soon, as I have, I believe, recorded my review of this one, along with this next game that I'm talking about, which I have talked about on the channel already. That is iwanaku. So iwanaku, it has rated really well on my most recent ranked video, or at least one of my last couple of ranked videos. This is another deduction game, but it has more of a Minesweeper feel to it. Again, very clever. It works well, very smooth. Has it held up over multiple plays? Again, stay tuned, because I think I've recorded this as part of a compilation with the aforementioned Archaeologic. But that's all of the games here. So 18 very unique and distinct titles, games of old, games of new, and everything in between. But hopefully there's something here that has piqued your interest. Please do let me know what you're looking forward to me covering, if any. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye-bye.